Welcome to the NCDWI Guide podcast, where defenders of the Constitution assemble to prepare for courtroom battle and firm owners gather to develop marketing strategies that will revolutionize the practice of criminal defense. Here's your host, the NCDWI guy, Jake Minnick.
Hello, fellow freedom fighters, and welcome to episode 234 of the NCDWI Guy podcast. On today's episode, we close out our 4-part endurance series. Maybe it's a 5-part endurance series. We'll talk about that in a moment, but we close out our endurance series on today's episode. I am getting ready to record this episode for the second time. And I'm not doing that because there was some sort of a glitch or technical issue with record number 1. I recorded this episode originally yesterday, and after having done that recording, I thought about it and I was like, this series has been a blast. It has been amazing. And I don't feel like I conveyed what I wanted to convey in yesterday's recording. And so I'm doing this again for the second time. And it's interesting to do this again after having already done the recording once. But again, I feel like this has been an important series, something that I'm pretty passionate about, and I want to close it down in the right way. So I spent about an hour and a half preparing for recording yesterday. Did the recording, took roughly an hour and 15 minutes to do that recording. And then afterwards, it just didn't feel right. I don't feel like the messaging was consistent. I feel like I was a little bit sporadic in my thoughts and not as in the zone as I was hoping to be. So I've done another hour of prep today and recording for the second time. And that is just to say one of the things that we're going to talk about today really comes from David Goggins on staying hard, that mindset, which he says, don't stop when you are tired, stop when you are done. And I'm not really that tired because I really enjoy talking about this stuff. But I think sometimes it's kind of easy to think, well, you know what? Put in the prep, put in the time, delivered. Maybe it wasn't the greatest product, kind of the greatest thought, but the whole purpose of this podcast is to provide value. And if I don't feel like the value that is deserved is getting delivered, then it's time to step into take 2 and make sure that I am delivering value on the podcast. So with that said, I'm pumped to dive into take 2 of this final endurance episode. And again, this has been either a 4 or 5-part series, 4 parts really in terms of the endurance, but there was a prequel episode. So back on episode 230, we talked about quelling the storm, how to respond in a moment of difficulty, how to react when life punches you in the face. And that was before I had decided to do this 4-part episode. That episode was recorded about 2 weeks before the Freedom Fighter Summit, 2 weeks before the disaster of Helene wrecked Western North Carolina. But that was definitely kind of a prequel episode into this 4-part endurance series. So on episode 231, we really kicked things off in full swing in terms of this series and kind of observed the tragedy and the heroic response of individual people in the face of tragedy through the lens of Hurricane Helene. On episode 232, we talked about the importance of studying tough people and did that through looking at Lansing's novel Endurance about Ernest Shackleton's journey to Antarctica or towards Antarctica before his ship became stuck in the ice and then having to return back to home through a series of trials and tribulations and the amazing heroic spirit that was evident in that storm. And then finally, Episode 233, last week's episode, we looked at doing tough things, doing hard things, the importance of practicing suffering, so that when moments of trial come up, you will be prepped mentally by having gone through intentional and purposeful trials that you put into your own life. And so today we are going to close it out by talking about building a resilient community and how to prepare yourself for times of trial by having the right people around you. And I'm going to do this primarily by looking at it through the lens of my team at Minnick Law, as well as the kind of freedom fighters community that has been built up. So if you want to be resilient, if you want to be tough, if you want to be hard, again, 3 ways that we've talked about it here in this series is by studying other people that have gone through difficult moments, by putting yourself through difficult moments, and then by building up a support community that can help you through the tough times. So that's what we're going to focus on today, and I'm super excited to talk about this. I'm wearing my Freedom Fighters shirt from this year's summit. If you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. That was a theme of the summit. That's what our t-shirts read. It was fun seeing everybody in the t-shirts that was in the building on Friday. But how do you build a resilient community? So I'm going to look at 5 ways that you can build a resilient community, a community that can stand trials, that can stand tribulations. So away we go. How do you build a resilient community? Number 1, in person. In person. We live in a virtual time. People working remotely, getting on to video chats with one another, discussing important topics by telephone, working from home, working from your car. So in person, is this countercultural? But I think it is an important thing as we become kind of more separated in this digital age, more in this social networking space of having friendships and professional relationships on Facebook and LinkedIn, working remotely, working from home. I think you build a resilient community in person. Now, I'm going to look at this from a couple of different angles, but I'm going to start, as I start many of these kind of things, with a quote from Henry Ford. Coming together is a beginning. Keeping together is progress. Working together is success. Coming together is a beginning. Keeping together is progress. Working together is success. And again, none of that by Henry Ford says working in person. But I think when we think about coming together, keeping together, working together, we think about these relationships with other people, whether that's people within our own firm or organization or people in the legal community. So I want to look at this from a couple of different angles. Like if you want to build up a resilient gym membership, again, you can have all of these online workout forums where everybody is kind of like going virtual and you're doing, cycling classes or some sort of other online class with a person that is in a totally different state. The other attendees are not in your same area or state. It's certainly not in your home if you're operating that way. But there is a different feel in terms of workout culture when you walk into a gym. My son, Manuel, and my daughter, Natalie, have been on me about getting a gym membership. As we've now moved down to North Topsail Beach, we do not have all of the home gym equipment that was at the house in Weaverville. And so they're like, hey, we need to get a gym membership. Don't want to discourage that. So we signed up last couple of days for gym membership, and just walking into the gym yesterday, I am used to exercising alone, both at home in my home gym and then running. It's like exercise is done solo for me for the last, decade plus of my life. I mean, I would go to a hotel and maybe work out in the hotel gym, but being a member of a gym is like being a member of a specific community. And it's pretty freaking awesome to walk into a gym and smell the smells of a gym and see other people getting after it at 5:30 in the morning. It's just something magical to be a part of. And as much as you might be able to remote into that from your uh, home when you're starting on a cycling class, or you're doing some sort of weight training that is being, done by some remote trainer, and being a part of a virtual community, it's not the same thing. If you want to build a resilient culture, then environment matters, atmosphere matters. And in my opinion, being in person matters. Now, I'm going to offer some caveats to this and kind of, how this has worked in our firm and in the freedom fighters community, seeing this in practice at the summit. But just to kind of give some perspective to this, recently, some major companies have mandated coming back to a workspace and collaborating in person. So X has famously done this, formerly Twitter. Elon Musk has mandated this at X. Amazon has moved to a requirement of, I think it's 5 work days a week. It's either 4 or 5 work days a week from their corporate team to be working in person. And this is something that may come as a shock, seems counterintuitive, doesn't really make sense. But Zoom is requiring their corporate leaders to come to the office at least 2 days a week. Zoom. This is like the virtual community of virtual communities. This is what Zoom did during COVID, is basically allow everybody to work remotely. And yet their thought process is, we want people to be working in the same space. And so you could say, well, maybe this is just some sort of like slave driver mentality, some sort of like weird corporate design. But from my opinion, Amazon is tracking everything. Elon Musk, love him or hate him, is a business person that is about the operation of business. And how can a business be successful? And looking at numbers and looking at metrics. Zoom doing the same thing. And whatever metrics, numbers, figures that they are looking at, all of them are saying you are going to have a better, healthier group of workers if you have everybody operating in the same space. This isn't, if this didn't make sense, it was driving away the top talent, it was something that could be done without, there's no way that these companies move in that directions just for, excuse my language, shits and giggles. This is not something that was not thought through. These are companies that are intent on the bottom line, and I would say also intent on producing a healthy work environment, that want people to be fully engaged and fully alive on the team. And so if these mega companies that are tracking everything are moving in this direction, that says something about the power of working in the same space. So let me tell you how I, recently saw this in our own firm space. I've been trying to kind of figure out, I'd say a little bit over the last few months, how we could improve company culture. It just feels like over the last few months, we've got an amazing group of people, an amazing team. But I have kind of let my foot off the gas of really trying to be intentional about how we grow as a group, how the Minic Law community gets stronger, is better at supporting one another, is better at communicating with one another. And so I've thought through different initiatives that we've had in the past. I've thought through some of the kind of core values, themes, and different reward systems that we've had. And it wasn't until Friday night, September 27th, Helene came through Asheville the morning of the 27th. It wasn't until Friday night that we had one of our best culture moments in firm history. I'm not saying that like lightly, literally in firm history. And we are now approaching 15 years in business. So this is a lot of opportunities for culture growth, and that Friday night will stand out as one of those moments where there was a massive increase in the culture of the firm. And so why is that? Well, I've lived in Western North Carolina my whole life, and there was nothing kind of on my radar that said you are going to have kind of Noah's Ark level flooding in the mountains of North Carolina due to Helene. Again, the predictions were there's going to be a lot of rain, there could be flooding, trees down from all of the, wild wind gusts that are going to come through. And so a lot of power outages and that type of thing. But in terms of the damage caused by Helene, I don't think that's anything that could have been predicted. If it had been that the Freedom Fighter Summit was scheduled when a blizzard was predicted to come through, we would not have had the summit. I mean, it likely would have been something that it's like, okay, if we've got 30 inches of snow predicted, we're not going to have people coming in from around the state to be here. But, heavy rain, it's happened a lot in the mountains of North Carolina, and there have been mudslides in the past. There have been, again, down trees, these type of things, but nothing like what occurred from Helene. So again, not expecting to see the damage that was just wreaked havoc on the community in Western North Carolina. On day 2 of the summit, for those that kind of came in ready to rock and roll, once we got going, there was really nowhere to go. Even though the power was out, even though there was no microphone, no PowerPoint, there's nowhere to go because literally like roads were shut down. The rain was coming down crazy on Friday morning. There was really no cell service was knocked out. There was really nowhere to go. And even though we repeatedly told everybody, hey, we're in kind of an unprecedented situation. There's obviously a wild storm that is wreaking damage in the area. If anybody needs to leave, if anybody needs to step out of the room to make phone calls, wants to attempt to leave, whatever it might be, obviously, no need to check in, other than just letting us know, hey, I'm going to hit the road, so that there can be some accountability there. But nothing that would have stuck out as again, being, this horrific situation that we observed then once we kind of got back into Wi-Fi situation, but really was nowhere to go. And several people after the summit on Friday tried to head home, found the interstates blocked, and came right back to the hotel. A few of the attendees that tried to leave on Friday and didn't return ended up staying in their cars on the way back because literally the roads were blocked. But on Friday night after the summit, there's nowhere to go. Most of our team, even people that live locally in Asheville, spent another night in the hotel. No electricity other than in the common areas of the hotel. So rooms were dark. There's nowhere to go. And so we sat out on the patio and played Uno and had some drinks. The Hilton bar was open. The bartender there was unbelievable, and just learned within the last couple of days that he didn't charge nobody for drinks on Friday night. Our group included, but the Hilton wrote that off. So kudos to the Hilton in terms of like helping to make lemonade out of lemons on Friday night. You know, was taking down people's room numbers and credit card information, but ultimately they decided, you know what, we're just going to write this off. So we're sitting out there on Friday night. The storm has passed. It's pretty calm outside. Beautiful night, comfortable weather. Again, not too hot, not too cold, playing Uno, having a chat. And it was one of the best culture moments that we have had in firm history. No ability to communicate with other people on cell phones, kind of going through a pretty bizarre circumstance in terms of the natural disaster that had just gone through. Again, we didn't realize the full extent of the damage by any means at this point. It's just kind of like, hey, let's wait out this and you know, kind of see where we are come tomorrow. But we came together as a group, you know, around a table, around some drinks, around some conversation and friendship, and ultimately a number of other attendees from the summit joined the table. Joshua Lennon from Clio came to the table. Scott and Megan Thomas from Silver Lining, who is another sponsor, you know, we're out there part of the conversation. And it was just an incredible opportunity to grow together. And again, you can't replicate that when you're not in person. You just can't replicate that when you are not in person, taking advantage of the presence of the other people. And I really have not felt that connection with the other people on the team in that way since probably our last firm retreat at the Whitewater Center a couple of years back. Just have not felt that same level of camaraderie, that same personal connection with the other people at the firm. So there's something to building a connection in person. I think this is something to think about because we operate very spread out. You know, there's 17 to 20 people at the firm at any given time over the last couple of years. And, you know, we're from one side of North Carolina to the other. We have a couple of kind of hub places, Asheville and Gastonia, where we have several admin members and attorneys working together. But for the most part, you know, we have lone wolf attorneys throughout the state. We have a number of our admin team that are working virtually multiple days a week. And so there's this kind of virtual element to our firm. We do weekly huddles where we all, you know, get on Zoom together, Google Hangouts together, and kind of talk through core values, talk through issues at the firm, have guest speakers. But there's a lot of remote working that's happening, a lot of remote support that's happening. And again, no matter how much those huddles bring us together, there's nothing like being brought together in person, especially when you have the opportunity to talk about non-work related stuff. And that's so much easier to talk about when you are in person with the other people on the team. So if you want to build a resilient community, I would say for us as a firm, that's something that we're going to have to think through moving forward, because the amount of culture build that happened in a 3-hour block of time on Friday night, September 27th, really like put to shame any other culture building that has happened, you know, in the last 6 months collectively. If you want to build a resilient culture, you got to do that in person. I'll give another example of this. So in addition to recently attending the Freedom Fighters Summit, I got to attend the ClioCon So Clio's uh, virtual conference, or not virtual, Clio's conference virtually, where they basically are talking through technology developments and the practice of the business of law and software that can be used to support that, and technology that can be used, and coaching, entrepreneurship. I mean, it's an amazing conference on the business and technology surrounding practicing law. But I had the opportunity to attend this virtually. And it's $1,500 in person to go to this summit. Maybe you got a discount, depending on when you purchase tickets, but line cost is $1,500 for ClioCon in Austin, Texas. They had, I want to say they had like 5,000 attendees. I mean, it was a humongous amount of people at ClioCon. They've done it for more than 10 years. I can't remember exactly what number it was in terms of how many conferences that they have hosted, but they've definitely been down this road before. They've done this rodeo before. It's an impressive space that they operated out of. It's impressive technology that they used to kind of host it virtually as well. And they had, 1,000 more people attending virtually. It's an amazing lineup of speakers. Jack Newton, CEO of Clio, gave an amazing opening keynote. James Clear, author of Atomic Habits, was one of the other keynote speakers. And then the individual panelists and other speakers that they had was just an amazing lineup of speakers. So great content. They're doing it in this amazing space. But if you're going in person, $1,500. I paid $25 for my virtual pass. That was 2 days, 2-day virtual pass to like listen to all of the major speakers. You could go in and do virtual networking with other lawyers that are attending the event virtually. So there was opportunity to build connection. Amazing lineup of speakers. Didn't have to order a plane ticket, didn't have to reserve a hotel room, didn't have to like set aside 2 days for traveling to and from Austin. None of that. Basically just sit down at my computer 3 minutes before Jack Newton's supposed to take the stage and just click play. And that's how simple it is. Save the money, save the cost of the hotel room. Didn't have to go to the conference. And did I win out over those that were there in person? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. So why? Why is that? Well, I mean, I didn't take full advantage. Because I'm at my desk, my phone is still going off, my email, I'm checking that. I'm looking at, our case management software and providing updates to the team. I'm trying to jump in and out of meetings. I got like very little value out of the summit. Definitely $25 worth of value. I'm not going to complain, but I didn't put in the time and energy to actually take advantage of 2 full days, like 8-hour days worth of learning. I was jumping in and out. I probably watched about 2.5 hours worth of content over that 2-day period. Didn't go in and virtually meet any other lawyer. Didn't attempt to do any type of like virtual networking. I don't believe in that. But again, I just didn't even take advantage of that opportunity. And so maybe the kind of question is like, why? Why did I not, try to take full advantage? Well, I think part of it is you basically get out what you put in. You get out of a situation what you put in. And I had $25 worth of financial buy-in to attend this ClioCon. And so it's like, hey, if I don't attend any sessions other than the opening keynote, man, I still went out. And that's actually true. But because I didn't put in a $1,500 investment, I wasn't committed schedule wise to having to sit and listen to every single speaker that came across, regardless of the fact that they're going to help me build my business better. Didn't waste the time, right? In my mentality, instead of thinking I didn't invest the time. But because I hadn't put in that like financial investment, there wasn't that buy-in. There wasn't that sunken cost theory of like, hey, I gotta really, take advantage of this because I put in the time, money, energy, schedule, travel, all of these things that if you're in person, you're going to Austin, Texas, paying $1,500 to listen to these speakers. You are not going to waste that opportunity. You're going to spend every minute taking notes from these lecturers, meeting other attorneys, and creating referral relationships, going to the exhibitors and vendors and looking at different legal softwares that might be able to help your business. You're going to take full advantage because you just carved out of your schedule this 2-day period, this amount of financial money that you're putting into it. It's totally different when you attend something in person. And the difference in terms of takeaway for me at ClioCon versus the Freedom Fighter Summit was tremendous. And it wasn't because of ClioCon not having good speakers or not having a good program. Their program's amazing. I mean, it's definitely something I'm hoping that I can go to live in person in Boston next year. So if you're listening to this, you're thinking about going to ClioCon, hopefully we run into each other at ClioCon in Boston, Massachusetts next October. But the difference this year between ClioCon and Freedom Fighter Summit wasn't even close because I was at the Freedom Fighter Summit in person. An atmosphere, environment, building connections, being educated, all of that. Like your attention span looking at a screen through a computer is not what it is when you're fully engaged in a room. If you want to build a resilient community, if you want to build any community, number one thing you should think about is, can this be done virtually? And if it can't, and I think most of the time community cannot be built virtually, then you got to figure out how are we going to do this in person. And this community that we have built together through the podcast is an amazing group of lawyers. It's so cool to hear the reach out from lawyers across the state of saying, man, that guest that you had on the episode was amazing. Oh, I took this, I took this, practice note away from this particular episode and it helped me on win my case in the courtroom. I mean, those are such amazing stories to hear. And there's a true community. When I say hello, fellow freedom fighters, I mean, I know I'm talking to an amazing group of lawyers that's listening in. So we built something up. But there is something special about the summit because it provides this annual opportunity for us to come together and learn in person, to become a resilient community, a community of warriors, a community of freedom fighters in person. That's how you build up a resilient community, is by doing it in this personal connection mode. So if you want to build a resilient community, number one, do it in person. Number two, key to how to build a resilient community is don't micromanage. Don't be a micro manager. You always got a plan, but you also have to allow flexibility in the plan. So how has this come up in the summit and at the firm? Let me just take one step back and we're going to kick it off with another quote from General George Patton. He said, never tell people how to do things, tell them what to do, and they will surprise you with their ingenuity. That is a quote that over and over, again and again, I have seen be true in our business with the members of our team. Don't micromanage. Tell people how to do things. Never tell people how to do things. Tell them what to do, and they will surprise you with their ingenuity. Don't tell them the how. Give them the why, but don't tell them the how. Here's why we're doing this. Please go execute, and then let them do it the way that they want to do it. Let them complete the mission the way they want to do it. Definitely Jamie Cochran talks a lot about this from Echelon Front perspective of these laws of leadership. combat laws of leadership. Don't micromanage. So at the summit, there's a couple of ways that this was evident. Number one, there's no agenda. This was true in last year's summit, true again, no agenda. So we have planned out to a T what the summit schedule is going to look like. Planned out to a T. So this speaker is coming on for 25 minutes. This speaker is coming on for 50 minutes. This panel is going to last 30 minutes. This panel is going to last 35 minutes. There's going to be a 10-minute break here, a 15-minute break there. Here's the announcements that are going to be made before this break. This is the video that's going to get played at the end of the break to kick things back off. Here are the intro songs for this speaker and that speaker. And we planned out to a T the schedule for both days. It was not haphazard. It was extremely intentional how that was planned, but no agenda. No agenda. And part of the reason for that is so that people will stay present. You know, I'm not going to skip out on this next speaker because I don't know who this next speaker is. Part of it is about being present and fully engaged in the moment. And so it's not, okay, here's when my next break is coming up. Here's when the next time frame is for here's who's speaking at this time. Oh, there's this panel on now. I don't, I think I can skip out on that. Basically, none of it was skip worthy, in my opinion. But if you don't know, then you're fully engaged in the moment. So that's part of the mentality. But part of it, and this wasn't really intentional from our side of things, but part of it is that as things don't go according to plan, you can adjust in real time, both for kind of massive change in the plans that Helene brought in terms of speakers not being able to come to the summit to deliver their talk, panelists not being able to show up, lunch having to get started an hour and a half earlier because the freezer did not have power and they were worried about the food sanitation and making sure that everything was going to be delivered. So the Hilton people said, hey, look, our fridge went out this morning at 9. Like, we need to serve lunch at 11 versus lunch at 12:30, like it's supposed to be today. Is that okay? Yeah, cool. We can adjust the schedule. So some of it was just, kind of the circumstances going on around us, but then it's also allows for flexibility when there's something going particularly well. When you have a speaker that is going longer on Q&A and they're your keynote speaker who you pay thousands of dollars to come in and talk, and they're willing to go long, you let that speaker go long. You don't cut them off because you say, oh, well, your time is up. When you have a panel that is just absolutely crushing it with the banter and the Q&A, and you don't want to shut that down, you let that go on. At some point, you got to say, hey, all right, well, we got to move on to the next program. But if it's supposed to be 35 minutes and you go 45 because you know that there is flexibility and there's no agenda posted to be like, oh, hey, we're running behind schedule, even though we know, like, behind the scenes, that things are now kind of somewhat running behind schedule. And it's like, okay, well, I can take 10 minutes off of my presentation here. We can cut a break short, or we can eliminate these particular announcements and just jump right back in. We can eliminate this kind of like opening intro video that we were planning on playing at this next thing. You can adjust it in real time. So don't micromanage. Don't get frustrated sometimes when things don't go according to plan. If you're on a schedule and you're all about like, hey, here's the next thing that has to happen, you can miss out on golden opportunities for growth, golden opportunities for learning. So don't micromanage. Another place where this came out in the summit was on our panels. So last year's Summit 2023, we had basically full slew of speakers day 1 and day 2. I mean, it was like speakers from 8 o'clock in the morning until 6 p.m. on Thursday. and 8 o'clock in the morning until 4 o'clock in the afternoon on Friday. I mean, it was just one amazing speaker after the next, but it was all kind of like prepared talks. There was a couple of speakers that had some Q&A built in, but that it was really just, let's give as much content as possible and have speakers that have their presentations planned out, their PowerPoint, they're ready to go. It's clean, it's sharp. We don't want to like miss this opportunity. And let me tell you what, I learned something at this year's summit. We had 3 panels at this year's summit. We had an AI panel, a marketing panel, and a culture panel. And those to me were some of the most valuable sessions that we had at the summit. These unscripted presentations. I mean, if you want to call it a presentation, I wouldn't call it that. These unscripted conversations that were going on from the moderator to the panelists, from the panelists to one another, from questions coming from the audience, these unscripted answers, unscripted responses were unbelievably valuable. It was amazing. I really wish that all 3 panels could have been longer and something to think about for next year in terms of how we can improve, always trying to grow. But these unscripted responses were so powerful. And again, like a PowerPoint presentation that is thought out, prepared, beautifully delivered in terms of the talk that goes along with that. I mean, that can all be very powerful in these types of settings. But man, don't micromanage everything, because some of the best moments come off script, come in response to one of these amazing panelists just saying in the moment, hey, here is this thing that in response to your particular question would be incredibly valuable. And then you realize it's actually valuable to half the audience. Like, it's not just this one person's question that this is going to be helpful to. So don't micromanage everything. Don't micromanage all of the aspects of a conference. Don't micromanage all the aspects of your life. And if you want to build a resilient community, you've got to allow for flexibility. You've got to have a team that is able to flex. And so again, applying this also to our firm. I mean, I have seen this time and again now over the last 2 weeks. We have 4 case managers at the office, so 4 paralegals, basically the primary support person for our attorneys. We have 4 case managers that have 10 lawyers between them. All 4 of them were out at the same time post-Helene. All 4 case managers out. So what does that mean? Other people got to step up. Other people got to be able to wear that hat and step into that role. Attorneys have to be charged with basically taking care of themselves, be able to be flexible enough to kind of take over some of those admin duties. Other people on the admin team in our intake had to step up into case manager roles. And you saw this incredible flexibility of, hey, if you have everything planned to a T and it's like, hey, this is the role that you're in, this is the hat that you wear, and you're never going to be expected to go outside of that, you are going to come in for a world of hurt when you've got to pivot in a moment of unprecedented circumstances. In a situation that comes out of left field, everybody's going to look around and say, well, that's not my job. I'm not charged with doing that. That's not my role. Nobody's picking up the slack. No. At our firm, people were wearing all kinds of hats that were outside of their job description. Attorneys were on the phone helping answer incoming calls. Our intake team was diving into the roles of case manager and helping file documents online, responding to clients, helping to keep people updated. I mean, it was all over the map for a couple of weeks as people were trying to kind of flex into roles where our team members in Asheville were not able to respond because didn't have electricity, didn't have Wi-Fi. The damage was real in terms of our team in Asheville having to deal with damage to their homes and properties and families. I mean, it was real. And so everybody else on the team has to be able to, in that moment, step up. So if you want to build a resilient community, don't micromanage. You got to plan, but allow for flexibility. Number 3, how to build a resilient community: be vulnerable and don't sugarcoat stuff. As a leader and as a member of a team, be vulnerable and don't sugarcoat the news. Don't sugarcoat the bad news. You've got to be radically candid. And this is the area that I absolutely struggle in. I struggle in delivering harsh realities to other people. I have a by nature optimistic outlook on life and on bad circumstances. I just have this like gut feeling that everything's always going to go good in the end. And despite having many times in my life where it hasn't gone good in the end, I have this like cornerback mentality of, hey, somebody just threw a touchdown pass on me and I totally forgot about it. Like I'm back out on the field the next play. Like you'll never get past me. They get past me again. We come back out on the field 20 minutes later. I'm like, that never happened. I'm not, you'll never score a touchdown against me. Like I just have this unbelievably like optimistic worldview that everything's going to be fine, everything's going to work out. And that's clearly not the reality of the situation sometimes. So both from like a natural perspective and then also just not liking confrontation, not really being excited about having difficult conversations. Sometimes this is an area where I really struggle, being vulnerable and not sugarcoating the circumstances. But if you want to build a resilient community, you got to expect people to step up when you deliver hard news. You got to level with others so that you can give them the opportunity to step up. I found this online, and I don't know where it came from. This is an anonymous source as far as I can find, but I found this quote: "I don't sugarcoat shit. I'm not Willy Wonka." I love that. I'm a huge Willy Wonka fan. I love the new Wonka movie. The musical is great music. Love the Gene Wilder Willy Wonka. I mean, that's just like one of my favorite movies. I love the whole idea of the chocolate factory. So I'm big into Willy Wonka. I'm a fan of Willy Wonka's imagination. But I love this quote: "I don't sugarcoat shit. I'm not Willy Wonka." And I think sometimes that's the reality of the situation. Sugarcoating does not help people. It typically does not help your client. I won't say typically, it almost never helps your client to sugarcoat the reality of the situation that they are facing. Your goal as a lawyer, a lot of times, is to help your client gain perspective of reality. What is going to happen with this charge? If they're going to be convicted, you need to be as clear as possible that this is where the expectation is. And all kinds of things could happen, but here's the reality of the circumstance that we're facing. You've got a client that's charged with a habitual DWI, and you're like, you know what? If you're found guilty of this, or we plead guilty, maybe you'll be okay. You'll be placed on probation. No, you are looking at a minimum 12-month jail sentence. There's like no way around this. There's no inpatient treatment that we could use to kind of minimize. Like, you are looking at going to jail behind bars for minimum of 12 months. And obviously, if it's a different set of circumstance, regardless of what the charge is or what the kind of sentencing range is, you're trying to help your client grasp the reality of the situation. You do not help your client by sugarcoating bad news. And it's the same thing when you're talking to your team, when you're talking to your community. So on Friday morning, we're getting ready to kick things off. Steven, DJ Do It, had got in there and got his equipment rocking and rolling. And, about 8:40, we finally got music off the ground. He got everything connected. I'm getting ready to play our day one recap video that James Rosella put together, and it's just amazing. We're ready to like pump this thing out. Thursday had felt like, a mixture between, club and classroom. I mean, like this amazing, infusion of entertainment and enlightenment. I mean, it's just like this amazing atmosphere on Thursday. Friday morning rolls around. We're kind of starting to get this vibe up. Janet Ward Black has agreed to kind of adjust schedule and kick things off. And then 9:03, right before she's getting ready to kind of take the stage, power goes out and it is down. And now people are losing cell service. The screens are gone. The microphone is gone. Things are up in the air. This is not going according to plan. You don't throw a legal conference or host a CLE in the dark, right? And there was emergency lights on, so it wasn't that like bad a situation. But power goes out, the AC is down, the screens are down, the music is down, the lights and strobe lights that Stephen had ready to go, that's all down. And we're operating in the quiet. And in that moment, everybody could say, hey, look, let's all run for safety. But that's not what happened. And again, I was very, very, clear pretty soon after that moment that, look, this storm looks bad. It's a rough situation. If you need to step out of the room to make a phone call at any point, do not feel like you're interrupting things. Like, take care of yourself. Check in on your family. Check in on any other people that you need to check in on. If you need to leave the summit, no worries at all. We'll get the like CLE hours figured out. Just you do what you need to do to take care of yourself. So it wasn't sugarcoating the situation, and I have a tendency to do that, but it's like, we're in an unprecedented situation. If you need to leave, if you need to step out, go for it. But in that moment where things were going sideways, most people could say, I'm getting out of here. I'm going to take care of me and mine. I'm going to go hole up. And instead, what I found was time and again, people walking up to me and saying, hey, Jake, what can I do to help? Hey, Jake, it sounds like you maybe are missing a speaker. Joshua Lennon came up and said, hey, Jake, I know I gave a talk yesterday, but I'm fully prepared to give, another talk. And here's 3 different, presentations that I can give. Obviously, it's going to be different, doing it without PowerPoint, but you just let me know if you need me to step up. Ron Shook, Dan Hatley, both stepped onto panels when, without any notice, and me asking, hey, could you step into these roles? Speaker can't or panelist can't be here. No problem. People were stepping up left and right. So if you don't sugarcoat shit, then people will step up in moments of difficulty, in moments of struggle, in moments of turmoil. If you're vulnerable about the situation, if you say, hey, like this is not going according to schedule, according to plan, people will step up. And so at this last week's huddle, after we had kind of the chance to kind of survive a couple of weeks of everybody wearing multiple hats at the firm, people jumping in and out, people, trying to get, supplies back to our team and the community in Asheville, pitching in, obviously covering from one another at the office. After, 2 weeks, the first 2 weeks of October, definitely not going according to script, definitely not going according to plan. We're in a pretty big financial hole to kick off what is traditionally a slow quarter for our firm. Quarter number 4 is traditionally a down quarter. Quarter number 3 has traditionally been our best quarter of the year. And quarter 4 that follows it has traditionally been our worst quarter of the year. And so starting off that worst quarter of the year in a hole is a scary spot to be in, because we want to be able to support our team. We want to be able to make sure that, when people walk into the office, they know that they've got stability, that they've got, a paycheck, consistent health benefits, retirement benefits, all of these different things that are going to be kind of, locked and loaded, ready to go. And so when you have a scary start to a financial quarter, it's the one thing if you're taking care of yourself and your own family and you're thinking, man, this is a rough spot to be in. We're going to have to like kind of tighten the belt buckle a little bit around the household. It's one thing to have that, but when you have it for 17 to 20 people, that is a very different situation, a different circumstance to be facing. And so at this last week's huddle, we kind of had to have like an honest conversation about like, hey, this is not like panic mode time. Like we don't need to all start like go posting our resumes out there and like looking for job elsewhere, but we are in a difficult spot because there has just been chaos that was created that we have responded well to, but things are not where they should be currently at this moment. And so you have a conversation, and instead, again, you don't have to hit the alarm button where that doesn't need to be sounded. You don't have to hit some sort of panic mode. You better start go looking for work. But if you're honest and you say, hey, we're in a hole and we need to get things back on track, and here's a plan for doing that, then people on the team will be able to better respond because you haven't sugarcoated the information. Look, I need to step up over the next couple months and get on return phone calls faster. I need to make sure that for these next few weeks, I am doing everything that I can to perform at a high level within my role, because this is a critical moment for everybody. And other people are depending on me to do my part in the process in order for them to be successful personally at the office, as well as for the rest of the team. When you lay things out and you say, hey, here's the situation that we are looking at, and you're not sugarcoating, people are able to respond. They have the opportunity to say, all right, well, I'm going to ignore this, or I'm going to jump ship, or they have the opportunity to say, all right, I'm going to double down and make sure that I'm doing everything that I possibly can to get things cranking on all cylinders. And if you want to build a resilient community, you can't sugarcoat shit. You have to deliver bad news straight. And then if you've got a resilient community, if you've got a resilient team, if you've got a resilient family, people will step up and perform in those moments. People step up and perform. So number 3, be vulnerable and don't sugarcoat. Number 4 way how to build a resilient community: set high expectations. Set high expectations. I think there's been a lot of conversation about this with like youth sports in terms of like, should everybody get a trophy? Should there be like points counted in seven and under soccer? Like, should the goals be counted? Should there be winners and losers in games? Should there be a championship game? Should everybody get a medal, a participation medal? There's been these kind of conversations, and so everybody's probably heard about this a fair bit. But if you want to have a resilient culture, you've got to be comfortable knowing when you came up short. You got to be comfortable setting a high bar, having a high bar set for you, setting a high bar for other people, and having some sort of scorecard that says, we either did well at this particular goal or we fell short. And you got to set high expectations. If you're setting a goal that you can hit every single time, you are not growing. Jocko Willink has said there is no growth in the comfort zone. There's no growth in the comfort zone. You're either growing or dying, and there's no growth in the comfort zone. So don't stay in the comfort zone. Set the expectations high and make them measurable. Make them specific so that you know when you have fallen short of the high expectations. So this was something that was a little bit scary about coming into this year's summit, because going into last year's summit, there was zero expectations, really zero expectations. There was no agenda. There was no prior experience of a Freedom Fighter Summit. There was no video, testimonial videos, photos from last year's summit. Last year, if you came to the summit, you did so because you had a conversation with, if you were in the firm, then Jake said, "Hey, we're going as a firm to the summit." Cool, good, Jake. Let's go as a group. If you were outside of our firm, you came to the summit because Jake said it was going to be great. And so you were relying on literally the word of Jake that this is going to be an amazing experience. But there was no proof of that. It was just like, okay, I trust Jake enough to come. And we had 65 people at last year's summit. So pretty amazing that there's that many people that were just like with no understanding really of what's going on. This is not for CLE credit. There's no agenda that I can look at. Like literally it's just like, just trust Jake and hopefully this thing goes well. We got 65 people at last year's summit. You know, if it had come and sucked, it'd just be like, man, he was off about that. You know, if you came and you thought it was great, which a lot of people did, and that's why a lot of people from last year came back to this year's summit. If you came and thought it was great, it was like, man, that exceeded expectations. But there was really no expectations going into last year's summit. Not so for this year's summit. This year, you know, there was 65 people that were there last year that you could talk to say, hey, what did you get out of this? Was it worth it? What did it feel like? What was the agenda like? Who was there speaking last year? Who were some of the other attendees? You could look at the recap video that we had, like, you know, front and center on the website. You could look at the testimonial videos of like literally multiple attorneys explaining why they, you know, recommended coming to the summit. You could look at the photographs that were taken from the summit to get an idea of what the experience would be like. This was no longer Gospel of Jake or Jake, you know, the what's inside of Willy Wonka's factory, so to speak, right? Like what's behind the gates. These people had gone in, they got the tour of the chocolate factory, came out and were able to say, here's what Willy Wonka's doing behind those golden gates. Here's what's going on. Here's what the dude in the purple hat and the purple suit is trying to present. Here's what's going on. The behind the scenes was real. Everybody got to experience it firsthand, and so you could talk to people. So along with those expectations, you've got a kind of heightened sense of, okay, we better deliver here in 2024. So you got to set the standard high. You got to set the expectations high. And so we knew coming into this year at the summit that we wanted to improve on what we did at last year's summit, at 2023 summit. And the same thing will happen from this year's summit to next. And how do you do that? Primarily by getting feedback from people. We sent out a survey to the attendees of the 2023 summit of, hey, which speakers did you like best? Which did you not? How could we improve this experience? What could we do better? Doing the same thing this year. I reached out to a lot of the attendees last year by phone individually to get some feedback. I've already started doing that this year, and I've got a lot more calls to make. But how can we make this thing better? Because the goal is to not just say, okay, let's coast. This is exactly, your people seem to enjoy this year's summit. Let's just hit the repeat button for next year. You know, we'll get a few different new speakers. You know, we'll change the titles on a few things and then boom, let's just move on. No, you want to constantly be setting high expectations. And that's something that we're always doing at the firm as well. setting high expectations. If you want to build a resilient community, you have to set the expectations high. In business, there's no participation trophies. In business, not everybody gets a medal. In business and in life, people are succeeding and failing all the time. It's not just this like mediocre, you passed the test and the bar was set pretty low. I mean, it'd literally be like if you went through did the limbo and it was always, set at 6 feet high, and you just keep walking through the limbo and you're like, man, I'm so good at the limbo. I don't even know if everybody on this call knows what the limbo is. If you used to go to a skating rink in the 90s, you know about the limbo. You know about how they did the limbo at the skating rink. My brother killed at the limbo. It was like, he won like 36 times straight, something crazy. He had it down. But, you know, the limbo. I mean, if you hit that bar, you're out. But if it's always set at 6 feet high, it's not because you're good at the limbo that you're getting through it every time. It's because there's no difficult standard that has been put into place. If you want to build a resilient community, you have to have the possibility to fail. Success has to mean something. Failure has to be painful. That's how we grow. The comfort zone is worthless when it comes to growth. So if you want to be resilient, you got to grow. If you want to grow, you got to set the standards high and come out of the comfort zone. All right, so final point here. How to build a resilient community. Number 5, create your culture carefully. Create your culture carefully. You have to be intentional on building a resilient community, building a resilient group. At this summit on Thursday, the 26th, day 1, I opened the summit with this talk, with this keynote. Business is an endurance sport. Business is an endurance sport. And that presentation was completely different than what the last 4 episodes have been centered around. But we're focusing on the hardships and trials that you have to go through if you are a business owner, a lawyer, a paralegal. Business is going to be rough, just like life. If you want to become an endurance professional, then you're going to have to work at it. And business is an endurance sport. And literally after talking about, how to deal with hardships, I mean, it wasn't 24 hours before we were going through something that had never, none of us had ever experienced at a CLE before. Day 1 felt like a combination between classroom and club. Day 2 felt like a combination between CLE and campfire. I mean, that's what it was. I mean, it was a totally different vibe on day 2. On day 1, I had people at several of the tables that were like, I can barely hear the other people at my table because of the like pumping music that is going on. Day 2, you could barely hear the speaker because of the fact that there was no microphones. Had to crowd in. You had to lean into the conversation to hear what was going on. But again, the community of lawyers, the attendees of the Freedom Fighter Summit there on day 2, that was a resilient group of people. Probably my favorite moment of the summit came when Janet Ward Black began her amazing presentation about how to build a community, a culture that gives back. on day 2 of the summit. Just a amazing presentation. She had never given this particular presentation without a PowerPoint. So this was definitely, a first. She acknowledged that at the beginning of the talk. She had shifted her time a couple of times already in the morning because we were operating on flex schedule time and trying to work around like the food being served early. I mean, it was, she could not have been more graceful and supportive through this entire situation. But she began her talk on Friday by saying, I'm used to being with civil lawyers, and I'll tell you something right now. If this was a group of civil lawyers that had come to this summit starting yesterday, nobody would be here this morning. Nobody would be here this morning. And, at first I was like, thinking to myself, and I think I actually said out loud, man, we must be a bunch of dummies, like we must be a bunch of, nincompoops that are in here, like, in this storm that's raging outside. But again, from her perspective, this was like a badge of honor and distinguished feeling about this group of lawyers that she was speaking to. If you want to build a hard community, you have to be intentional about it. This was not a stay safe environment. You can build a culture of stay safe, or you can build a culture of stay hard. That's David Goggins' tagline, stay hard, right? As I opened up with, don't stop when you are tired, stop when you are done, is the David Goggins mentality. Safety is great. And if you want to build a culture around safety, that's absolutely fine. But if you want to build a resilient community, if you want to build a resilient community that can support you in tough times, then you better build a community that has a stay hard mindset. Nobody would be here if this was a group of civil lawyers. I just like, it was such a awesome moment in terms of, and it felt like that. The people that were there on Friday, it was like we were going through the ringer together. And obviously we were completely safe inside the building. The storm, nobody was really, having any type of, nobody's anywhere near the danger that a lot of the communities in the Asheville area and Western North Carolina as a whole, where there was like absolutely true danger and ultimately loss of life. I mean, this was no joke of a storm, but where we were, I mean, we're 100% dry, 100%, no concern about being in kind of true dangerous situation. But again, that mentality of being hard, I think felt powerful in that room. And it's so interesting because the group of lawyers that stayed there on Friday built a connection that I just don't think could be replicated, just because I don't think there'll be an opportunity to kind of replicate the circumstances that CLE was going on at during that time. But, people that had to spend hours getting home, had to spend an extra night at the hotel, had to spend a night in their vehicles. I was sure when I talked to these people on the phone afterwards that they're going to be like, Jake, you should have called that thing off. You're a total dummy. Like, I'm never gonna come back to the summit, and I'm sure as heck not gonna give you another phone call. Everybody that was there on Friday, I can't think of anybody that this is not true of. And I talked to everybody since the summit. Everybody that was there on Friday was like, that was one of the most powerful days of learning that I've ever been a part of, and I cannot wait for next year. Several have jokingly said, don't schedule this thing during a major hurricane. So definitely we'll take note of that, and that will be one of the areas of improvement for next year's summit, is that I will hopefully get approval from the man upstairs not to have a hurricane come through on day 2 of the summit. But again, joking aside, people are like, this is the best day, one of the best days of learning that I've ever had in my professional career, and really looking forward to next year's summit. That's a stay hard mindset. That is a community of resilient people. I feel like I should give, I've now said this several times to people on the team, but when you complete an ultra marathon, the award is not a trophy or a medal that hangs around your neck. The privileged prize of completing an ultra marathon is a belt buckle. A belt buckle. And I don't know where this originates from, but when I've completed my ultra marathons at the Daytona, at the Grindstone, at the Beast of the East, the goal was to finish the race so you could come away with a belt buckle. That's the sign of distinguished privilege and honor that you get when you complete the ultra marathon within the designated time cutoff. I feel like anybody that stayed at the summit through day 2 deserves a belt buckle, because it was, from a CLE perspective, the ultra marathon of CLEs. But you want to be intentional about having a stay hard mindset if you want to build a resilient community. At Minnick Law, our theme for this quarter is Fortitudine Vincimus, which is Ernest Shackleton's family motto, and that is, by endurance we conquer. We knew going into quarter number 4, since this happened several days before, this is going to be a tough go. Quarter number 4 is going to be a rocky road. Does that mean give up? Does that mean put out the retreat flag or the surrender flag? No. It means you're going to have to go hard. You're going to have to stop when you are done, not when you get tired. And I'll tell you, we have a resilient group of people, again, at the office. People stepping up from one another, people working extra hours, people communicating late at night, people stepping up again on the team, but more importantly, stepping up for people in their personal lives, checking on one another. Hey, are you okay? Are you doing, is your family safe? Do you need anything? Helping Lance, who's in our Charlotte office, is literally like the Navy SEALs of help. That one of our team members, Stephanie, lives in Swannanoa, a community that was just ravaged by Hurricane Helene. I mean, has been on, very much like the national news watch, this particular area in Western North Carolina, because of the damage done in Swannanoa. And after the storm, there was a bunch of different workers that came through, obviously, all of the utility companies that are there, but then obviously a lot of, just local people, family and friends coming in to support the Western North Carolina, and complete strangers coming in to support. But she took at one point a shot of a Coca-Cola truck that was there basically lending support. And it was like, this is the way that Coke has decided that they're going to come in and provide aid. And I feel like we need to paint something on Lance's truck that's like, this is the Minnick Law disaster crew, because Lance, who's in the Charlotte office, he lived through Hurricane Katrina in Louisiana, just an absolute savage when it comes to helping in the worst of circumstances, made multiple trips up to Asheville, was helping with removing debris and trees, providing food and water. I mean, just an absolute animal in terms of aid. Was cooking food and taking it to our team members in Asheville, helping get food stores up there. I mean, just an absolute animal. But you see people stepping up in these roles. And in real time during the storm, I got to see this in a special way from Zany, one of our team members who is kind of the event planner of the summit. Friday morning at the hotel at the Hilton. Again, at this point, power is still on. I'm preparing for day 2 of the summit. I'm up at 5. I am going over my presentation for day 2. I am reorganizing the slide deck for day 2 because we had a lot of, shifts in terms of which speakers were going to be talking when, a couple of people that weren't going to be able to make it. And so I'm like shifting out around the slide deck, getting everything finalized. And then Zany writes me about like 5:45 and says, hey, Panera is not going to be able to do breakfast for us this morning. Their team is out. Due to the storm, they're not going to be open. So we don't have breakfast online for this morning. I was like, all right, roger that. I gotta head to Ingles. Meet me down in the lobby if you can in a few minutes, and maybe we can jet and get some food. And so she's like, cool, let's go do this. And I'm going to talk about a warrior mentality. Zany's up at 5:45 on Friday morning. Concerned about how this is going to impact all of the people at the summit. I mean, she was an absolute star in terms of planning this thing. So we get downstairs. I run outside to my car. I'm like, I'll meet you in the lobby. I'll pull around. I go outside to get my car, and it is like raining sideways. I mean, it's just like pouring down, and it's super windy. I mean, you can get soaked in like 15 seconds outside. I get in the car. I pull around to the front. There's a little bit of like an overhang where you'd pick up, or drop somebody off at the hotel. Zany gets in the car. I'm like, Zany, this is pretty wild. There's definitely like, this is a hurricane that is coming through Asheville. And if you do not feel comfortable going down the road to the Ingles, I do not blame you. And feel free to, just say, Jake, I'm out. I was like, I can handle this. I'm be able to go get the food. And she's like, nope. I trust you. We're gonna be good. I'm ready to rock and roll. And it was just one of those moments where it's like, man, this is the kind of person that you want on your team in dark circumstances. Somebody that's like, hey, you know what? Here's the reality of the situation. I'm looking at the circumstances and, assessing, kind of what the reality of the situation is, calculating any risks. And again, this was heavy rain, but no flooding in this area. There wasn't any down trees in the Biltmore Park area. Wild rain and sideways. I mean, it was just crazy. When we got out of the car, we were one of 4 cars in the parking lot at Ingles. It is raining sideways. I had to like hold the door as I opened the door because I was afraid the door would like blow off. I mean, it was literally like the wind was just insane. We're one of like 4 cars in the parking lot. We're able to park like pretty much right next to the door. We are sprinting into the Ingles. We get in the Ingles. There's employees there, not many other people. And one of the employees is like, hey, our registers went down. I don't know if we're going to be able to check you guys out if you get groceries. And we're like, all right, well, I guess we'll see what happens. We go grab pastries, we grab donuts, we grab protein bars, we grab fruits. It's like whatever, some orange juice. I mean, literally, it's like we're just piecemealing this together to make sure that we have food for day 2 of the summit. We go and check out at the front. Fortunately, the power stayed on. I was sweating bullets as like he's scanning everything in, like, please don't go out, power, please don't go out. We get everything checked out. We go racing back out to the car. Again, it's raining sideways. We're getting soaked as we're like trying to get all this stuff in the car. We get it back to the hotel. We unload it. Zany is helping it, get it all set up. I'm like running off to the room to basically like, again, get everything prepped for the rest of the morning because now I've, lost some time trying to make sure that we're food wise up. But these are the type of people that we have at the office. This incredible group of people that is willing to step up in moments of trial and say, you know what, I don't care what is thrown our way. We're resilient. We got this. Tell me how we can, tell me how I can help. Tell me what I can do to step in at this moment and make a play. Put me in, coach. I'm ready to rock and roll. That's the kind of team that you want to have. And if you're trying to build a resilient community, you have to think about the culture that you are calling people towards. Again, our theme for this quarter at the office is Fortitudine Vincimus. By endurance, we conquer. We win. We achieve the goal by enduring difficult moments. The theme of the quarter was not surrender now because things are bad. The theme of the quarter was not, everybody hole up and, see you hopefully in 3 months if you're still around. No. The theme is by endurance, we conquer. If you want to create a culture of resilient people, you got to be intentional about that. You got to be intentional about the call to action. And I am so grateful to be a part of the resilient team at Minnick Law, the resilient and amazing group of team members that we have at the firm. And I am so grateful to be a part of the Freedom Fighters community. The summit really showcased to me what resiliency looks like in real time. What amazing things that people are capable of when the shit hits the fan. Human beings are so unbelievable to me. What human beings can achieve is unbelievable, amazing. And it's fun to see that in real time before your very eyes. So, feeling extremely grateful to be a part of the Freedom Fighters community, feeling extremely grateful to be a part of a firm with such unbelievable people at the office. And I look forward to building both of these communities here over the coming months. Something that we are going to stay hard together. We are going to conquer by endurance. And it has been a blast doing this 4-part series. Look forward to speaking with you again next time.